Hey guys, welcome back to Honey in the Rock. I'm Sophie, and I'm so honored and excited that you're listening today. Today is a solo episode, as you can tell, it's just me here. Um, but I just wanted to share a little more of some of my stories with depression and anxiety. Um, I've never shared some of these a little more personal ones, and I've just been praying about if I should share them and how do I share them, um, to shine a light back on Jesus, not for the attention of, oh, this is so hard, but instead of being like, no, look at Jesus and look at his goodness that I'm still here. And so I also just want to maybe share in hopes that it can bring comfort or hope to somebody who is struggling with this right now. And so it's like, I was there, I understand your pain, but look how the Lord took such good care of me and brought me to where we are here today, where I am now. And so I'm just going to be sharing some more personal stories. I encourage you to go back and listen to my episode with my mom. I wish I would have looked up what episode number it was, but it's like how to fight depression with truths with my mom, I think is what it's called. So just look that up. And that is like how to fight back at these lies of the enemy, or when your head is spiraling, how to fight back, but with the truth, because that's really the only way to fight with armor of God on. And that really is like the biggest part of my story is like, okay, how do I combat these lies of the enemy or these struggles that I'm facing with Jesus, because I can't do it alone. I think I've shared this before, but one time, and I don't really know where I heard it actually, but it was somebody was like, okay, well, how is your depression used for good? And how I answered that question was that it made me rely on Jesus for everything. Like I had to learn to fully rely on him. That my joy is only going to come from him, my contentment, my safety, my peace, my comfort, all of these things are only going to come from Jesus and Jesus alone. And so that's kind of what my depression has taught me. But today I'm going to kind of dive a little more in to what suicide kind of looks like, or looked like for me. Um, maybe I might have not used the right terminology, but suicidal thoughts, intrusive thoughts, all of these different things. Um, and I just want to have a couple little disclaimers. Um, I think I've been a little afraid to share certain stories because I don't want anybody to think it's their fault, or have a pity party. My struggles were real for me. They came from different events, traumatic little things that happened after Grant passed away. But it was nobody's fault. Honestly, the only reason I'm still here today is obviously because of Jesus, but because of my support system, my family, my close friends, different people who loved me so well through that hard time for me. And so um, that leads me kind of just like, if you're struggling, if you're kind of in this season of having a hard time finding the will to live, surround yourself with good people. Pray for that. Pray like, Lord, give me good people. Reach out to a trusted adult at church. Reach out to a good friend. Um, just find some trusted people. And if you don't feel like you have anybody to talk to, reach out to me. I would love to talk to you. I would love to pray with you and just be there with you. You need somebody to walk this road with you. And because there's not really a finish line or a starting line, it's just this sort of story of life. And so my story is nobody's fault in my life. Nobody, really did anything to set me off. It was just kind of how my brain was working in that season of life. Um, but as some of you might know, my story starts with anxiety. My anxiety kind of came around after my friend Grant was killed in a car accident in September of 2020. Um, Worst week of my life. It's really weird. Grief is a weird thing, because I could tell you every single detail from that week. I could tell you everything that happened, the people I saw, the things I thought, everything. And at the same time, I'll read my journal back and be like, I don't remember being in this much pain and hurting this much. And it's just kind of how the Lord protected me of not letting you remember all these fully traumatic moments. But after he passed away, it kind of stirred up this root of anxiety that my therapist said was going to come out eventually. Maybe when I moved off to college, maybe when I got married, but the next big life event, or maybe something traumatizing happened, it was going to set off this anxiety that was in me. And so it just got set off a little bit early. Once again, it was nobody's fault. It's just what happened. And I struggled with anxiety for a while. I remember the night I had my first anxiety attack, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't have a name for what anxiety was. Um, I didn't have a name for anything, honestly. I didn't really know what was happening. Um, but I had my first anxiety attack. I was in the shower, and my lips went numb and my hands went numb, and then slowly my whole body started going numb. My heart rate was really high, and I could not calm down. I was started crying, hyperventilating. It was like kind of dramatic, but looking back, I was like, poor thing. And I just remember laying on the floor of my shower, and the water was just hitting me, and I was like, I don't know what's happening to me. I think I'm dying. But I didn't want to ask for help. Um, a lot of my stories that I'm going to share today are, I have this like, I found this sentence that helps me kind of feel like I can describe it, is it felt like I was drowning, but I had people holding floats for me, but I wasn't grabbing on. And so my parents were right there with me. They were ready to walk the road with me. They were holding these floats out for me to grab, but I wasn't grabbing them. My siblings, my friends, my best friend, she was holding a float out and I wasn't grabbing it. These people at church were holding floats out for me and I wasn't grabbing it. And so I was just drowning, but not accepting the help that people were offering me. Um, and so I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't know really what was happening. But of course, I get on Instagram and I'm start watching these reels and I see what anxiety attacks are. And I'm like, I just had an anxiety attack, which not saying quote your doctors, ask a doctor, but and not don't believe everything you see on Instagram. But the more I looked into it, it was an anxiety attack, and that was the first of many. Um, and and I still didn't really have a word for it. I was like, oh well, that's silly. I had an anxiety attack. Oh well, move on with my life. It kept happening, kept happening. Um, and I started realizing I was watching over my brother, my oldest brother, and he was a senior in high school at the time. He was not like saying anything with suicidal thoughts. He was not voicing any of that. He wasn't having that. That wasn't his struggle. But I had convinced myself in my brain that he was going to kill himself. And so um, I had convinced myself it. So I believed it, obviously, because our brains are powerful. And I was just believing it and believing it and believing it. And so I started watching over him, which is very creepy. But where my bedroom is, if I look out my window, we can see our fire pit. And my brother's senior year, he had fires all the time. He would just sit by the fire, listen to old country music, and just watch the fire. Um, and for some reason, I had convinced myself he was going to purposely fall in the fire and die. This is not true. Like, this is completely 100% made up in my brain. But it's what I believed. And so I'd watch over him. And one night he saw me because I was looking through my window watching. And he just waved and he had this soft smile. He's like, and I was like, oh my goodness, that was weird. This is weird. What am I doing? And so next time I met with my therapist, I was like, this really weird thing happened. It's like I'm watching over my brother, but I have no reason to think any of the things I'm believing. And I just started sharing more examples. And that's when we put the name of I am struggling with anxiety. I was medically diagnosed with anxiety or whatever, and started learning strategies to kind of fight against it. I eventually got on a medicine for it, a low dosage, and that just kind of helped even me out, so I could start to grieve and honestly rely on Jesus. I was at such a deep point in my brain. I was like so far in there that I felt like I couldn't get out. And I'm not encouraging everybody just to get on anxiety medicine if you're struggling, but obviously like talk to a doctor. And our biggest thing was I am not going to be reliant on a medicine. I'm reliant on Jesus. And medicine, if this is going to help me, that's awesome, and I can use that. I can use this gift, honestly, the things God made, but I'm not going to be relying on a medicine. I should never be fully reliant on this medicine. And so that's how it's been. And so I was able, instead of being struggling with my anxiety to certain levels, I started um, being able to start grieving. This was only like 6 months after Grant passed away. It was the first real death that I've experienced. Where your heart feels shattered and you're trying to pick up these pieces and you just can't. And I learned so much about God in this time. Um, and he just was faithful to show up and show up and show up. And now, being almost going on 4 years removed, looking back at these things that I was so anxious about, I can see God so clearly now, how He didn't leave me. Even the nights I was like, I feel like I'm praying to a wall. I feel like I'm praying at my ceiling. I feel like he can't hear me. He never left me. He never moved. Honestly, I think he just came closer and closer. He was right beside me that whole time, and I could now see God so clearly through it. And so that's been sweet to look back now and be like, "Whoa, God was there the whole time, and God put certain people in my life at that time to take care of me and love me and point me back to who Jesus is." And so that's kind of the start. I needed to give a little background, so you can understand a little more of where my depression comes in. And so a lot of my depression is stemmed from anxiety. And so if I start getting anxious about something, overthinking these certain things, I quickly spiral into these depressive thoughts. And honestly, that was a lot harder on me than anxiety. Anxiety was just believable. Um, it was deep in my brain. It was just what was happening, and it was what I was saying, and I was thinking. It was altering the way I was thinking and acting. But depression just put me in this slump. I couldn't get out of bed. Obviously, kind of what depression looks like for a lot of people who struggle with it. It looked like that for me. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to eat. I read a journal entry back the other day because I was writing something about this, and I was looking back at my journal entries because I wanted to quote something, and it was like no, it was sometime in 2020 and 2021, and now it said, "My mom thinks I'm depressed. I don't think I am. I just don't want to get out of bed or eat, but I don't see the problem with that." And then like 3 days later, I was like, okay, wait, I think I am depressed. Anyways, first thing, your mom's probably always right. And it was just kind of funny how I was just trying to deny it, but it was really hard. And one day I was running with one of my best friends now, and I looked at her. I was like, Chloe, like, do you ever like just think like you want to drive in front of a train? Like, do you ever just have that urge of being like, I'm going to drive in front of a train? And she was like, no. I was like, well, that's weird because I thought that was a normal thing. And I just kept I'm an oversharer. And I just kept saying things and saying things. And she was like, Sophie, that's intrusive thoughts. And I was like, what? And so that was kind of just like the first sign of like, okay, that's interesting. Why am I having these intrusive thoughts? Why is this happening? Um, and that quickly spiraled to my first time that summer. We were on a family trip. It was such a good trip. I still have such sweet memories from that trip. Um, I'm so thankful my parents took me and my brothers on that trip. It was a hard time also because my brother was about to move off to college, and that was really hard for me. It was a hard change and a hard adjustment um, because of my relationship with him. And so um, not gonna cry. It was just really hard, and so this was our last little family trip before he left. But I got anxious about something, spiraled into this thing. We were going Arby's. I did not want Arby's. That was kind of my last straw. Broke down, and I just couldn't do it anymore. That was just like a lot of things had built up. It was not about the Arby's. It was not about what people were saying. It was that was just my tipping point. And at that point, my cup was just spilling out, and I had no felt like I had no control over it. And um, that was the first time I really thought I just wanted to die. And in that moment, I I thought I was really good at convincing myself of things. I had convinced that it would be easier for everyone else in my family and in my life that if I wasn't there because I was a burden. And, for the past year, I'd been struggling with mental health things. And I was like, I don't understand why I'm still struggling because God has been so faithful to me. And his steadfast love has not left me. And I knew that, but I just felt like I was a burden, not because anybody was telling me that or making me feel that way, but just because I convinced myself of that. And so I was sitting in the back of our minivan, and I was like, okay, I'm going to die. That's what everyone wants here. And obviously that didn't work out. Praise the Lord. Um, my mom was like, stop, Sophie, stop. And I wasn't actually going to do anything. That was never my intent. It was never, I just want to preface this, like, I was never going to actually do it. But I just really, really, really was so detailed in my brain that I was going to, but I knew I was never actually going to. Because I just heard God's voice in my head saying, no, Sophie, why would you do that? No, my plan is so much bigger than your plan. And that's what I just having to lean back on. Um, And so that was just like kind of the first time. It was just like a rude awakening of like, okay, I do not want to let my brain get there ever again, to where I think that I'm worthless and I won't be missed and that I can be replaced, and all these things, because nobody's telling me that. Nobody wants me to think that or believe that. I'm just making that up in my head. And so I need to stop. And so um, thankfully, my parents didn't let me even keep going. They're like, stop. This is kind of sidetrack, but if I was little and ever said anything like mean about my body, it wasn't like they did not entertain those thoughts. It was like, no, you don't talk about yourself like that. And so just little things like that. Um, just, not to entertain the thoughts of like, oh, that's fine. You can think that, you can say that. Is like, no, like that's not okay. Don't say that. Don't think about that. And so that was just kind of the first time that I really thought, I was like, I'm not gonna live anymore. And there was a couple situations after that. One super vivid one where I was in my bathroom, I was sitting on the floor. Once again, I feel like I need to preface this. I understand people have it a lot worse than me. I'm not saying my life is so hard. This is just my story. And I did not have anything to actually make it happen, make me actually die. But I was sitting in the bathroom floor just thinking about it and being like, I'm just gonna have to figure out how to do it, because I can't keep doing this. This is so hard. And um, I'm like, I don't know how I'm supposed to keep going. And as I was sitting there, Lauren Daigle's song, I don't even remember playing music. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember how the song started playing. But it was on my Alexa, and it was Rescue by Lauren Daigle, and it was like, I will rescue you, and I will send down an army. And it was just this wave of like, whoa, oh, okay, God. And in that moment, God just grabbed my heart and he was like, Sophie, this is not about you in this moment. And I was just saying, I can't do this. And it was like, no. When did it become that you had to do these things? It's always been him, where he holds me, he rescues me, he sends the army down, and he had sent an army. There was an army of people who loved me around me. It was like, I just need to accept the help that they're offering. Um, and I just remember that night, and it was so vivid. And I didn't remember that was a song that came on. I just kept saying, there's a song that played. There's a song that played that just yanked me out of it. And so I don't really exactly know how that happened. But me and Erin, my brother's girlfriend, were at the Lauren Daigle concert this year, and that song came on, and I looked at her. I was like, that was a song. That was a song. I was in my bathroom when that song came on, and it was really interesting just to hear her play it live, and it was just so sweet that God just grabbed my attention in that moment by that song to make me stop spiraling, to be like, stop, Sophie. Okay, let's be realistic here. Don't keep running down that path. And that wasn't the last time. There was a couple other instances that happened that started with me struggling with anxiety, spiraling into nobody wants me here. Everybody else's life would be easier if I was dead. My life would be easier if I was dead. I just want to go ahead and go to heaven. And that's not the right answer. And so if you're struggling, I hope this brings you comfort in the way of, it's not your plan. I would never guessed what's happening in my life. The people that I've met now, these experiences I've kept. I was um, sitting in the car with my friend the other night. We were just like talking, and I was like, why did God choose to keep me here when I gave him so many opportunities to let me go? When I made myself available to be the one to die. And not because I was like sacrificing myself, but because I thought the burden was too big. I thought life was too hard to carry. I was like, why did he choose me to stay? And it honestly kind of makes me excited, because now I have such a confidence that I'm here for a purpose. And my purpose is for Jesus, and your purpose is for Jesus. And if you're a believer, your whole purpose, everything you do, is to honor the Lord. And so that's kind of why I'm sharing this story, is because I want this to bring honor to Jesus, that he kept me here. He was steadfast in his love. He kept pursuing me. He kept chasing after me. There's an instance on Christmas Eve where once again I was like, I can't do this. On 4th of July where I can't do this. And it was these big heightened moments where I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And the Lord just kept showing up. And sometimes he was showing up through people, through whether that was my mom and my dad, or through a close friend, or my youth pastor and his wife, whether it was them. But it's just, it's just really interesting to see that, and to check on your sunshine friends. Everyone's like, oh, well, you're so happy, you're, this. And maybe it's because I'm blonde and people just have that, like, put two and two together. If you're blonde, you're this. But I was really good at faking it. Nobody at school would have known that I was struggling. Nobody ever knew, because I was so good at hiding it. But then it made it harder in the real moments, because when you stuff something and stuff something and stuff, it comes out. And then it comes out bigger, honestly. And so just to be vulnerable and share what's going on and share what's hard and share what you're thinking, um, because you're not alone in this. And if we start relying on Jesus for our peace and our strength, he will give it to us. um, but it's just, I don't even really know where I was going with that, but um, a lot of things, yes, stemmed from the traumatic grants, honestly, traumatic death. um, and so I'm not really sure where yours stemmed from if you struggle with this. But to get to the root of the problem, and then to ask for help, not to be ashamed of it. Um, you're not less than because you struggle with something. But don't stay there. Don't stay in the pit. Get up, put on the armor of God, um, fight this battle with the truth of Jesus. And we have these battles we fight, but the war's already won. Jesus already won the war on the cross. And so nothing is too big for Jesus. And I am so comforted by, recently I've been, what I've been learning in the Bible is just that he is near always. He's near to the brokenhearted and to the, good time hearted people. And then, wait, what was I going with that? He's near. And then I just kind of forgot my train of thought. Oh, he is not calling us to do something he hasn't already done. Jesus knows pain. Jesus knows suffering. But right before Jesus died on the cross, he was like, Jesus, take this cup from me. I can't. Or he was like, God, take this cup from me, Father. And God was like, no, that's not how this plan's going. I'm not taking this cup from you right now. But just wait and see. And Jesus knew the plan. Jesus knew he was going to die on the cross and rise again and be seated at the right hand of God. And so one day we get to be seated with Christ in heaven. And for now, we get to just be jumping up and down for joy with him. That doesn't mean hard days aren't going to come. Doesn't mean these really hard things, they're going to keep happening. It's when trials come, lean on Jesus. And I wish I could be like, oh, it's never going to happen. Everything in life is going to be rainbows and sunshines. It's not. It's going to be hard. We live in a sinful world. We live in a broken world. But there is hope. And you matter. You are loved. You can't be replaced. God has you here for a purpose. And I was talking to one of my friends this summer, and we just she saw Jesus a lot through Grant's death. And we talked about, she was like, but I think if you would have died, I wouldn't have seen the goodness of God, because you were the one who was showing me Jesus. And so if you died, it would have been like, oh, well, what? And so I think it's really sweet that God uses our stories in that way, that he holds us on, that he uses our broken hearts for good, to glorify him and glorify the kingdom. And so I just encourage you to ask for help if you need help, and lean on Jesus. Memorize scripture, because you can't do it alone. That was my problem. I began to try to do it on my own. I thought I could fight that battle on my own, and I couldn't. And when I was trying to fight and fight and fight, I just kept falling short. I kept not winning, obviously. And that's what was leading me to be so anxious and thinking that I didn't have a purpose and a will to live, because I was trying to fight battles on my own. But once God shook me, honestly, shook me awake and was like, open your eyes and lean on me. Stop trying to do it on your own. Stop trying to run from me. Just stop and rest in me and surrender to me, and just hold everything in your life with these open hands, because he's going to take things from you and he's going to give things to you, and he's going to reveal things. Sometimes he has to take something to reveal something greater. And so when he just kind of shook me awake one of those nights in my bathroom, where I was like, I can't keep going, and he's like, yeah, you can, but I can. And then that's when it all changed for me. And that doesn't mean I don't still have days where I'm like, whoo, this is hard. This is really hard. Um, but to be like, okay, this is hard, but Jesus already won. And the battle has already been fought and won, and eternity is waiting on me. This is not my home. And so just to have these reminders, and so I just, my last thing I'll say is to have the things memorized, have these truths memorized, because when the hard times come, you're not going to want to believe them, but they're going to be in the back of your head. The amount of times is in the back of my head that no, I'm not. I am not in control. It is not my job to end my life because I am not in control. Jesus is in control, and me doing that means I think I'm in control when I'm not. And so having these truths in the back of my head, I am worthy. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm made for a purpose, with a purpose. And so these things kept coming back, kept coming back, even if I couldn't believe them in the moment or I had a hard time trusting it. I still knew it, and that's why I didn't act on anything. And so, if you need help, reach out. If you don't know who to reach out to me. I'm gonna read Psalms 23 really fast. This has been, hold on, gotta find it. This has been this is my favorite passage right now. It just keeps coming up in my life. I just started a Bible study with one of my best friends on it. I'm doing a Bible study with ladies in my church on it this summer. It just keeps coming up. Two people on the podcast recently, Blakely Huff and May Huff. Both of them, they're working together on something called The Overflow, where they're talking about the overflow of my heart, which is in Psalms 23. Just Psalms 23 just keeps coming up. And so I want to read it to you. It says, Psalms 23, starting in verse 1, it says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along the right path, bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect me and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemy. You honor me by anointing my head with oil. Your cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever." There's so many things I love about this. The idea of like, he is our peace, he is our hope, he will lead us beside still waters. And I felt that, and I know that's real, and so I know you can feel that too. He renews our strength, that we are not strong enough on our own to do this life, but we can do this life through him because he renews our strength. And then it's not if you walk through dark valleys, it's when you walk through dark valleys, he will be with you. It's not that if, it's the wind. The wind, he's going to protect you, he's going to comfort you, even in front of your enemies. And then your cup is going to overflow with blessings, maybe not from the worldly point of view, but in the eternal point of view. Our cup is overflowing because we have Jesus. And then he's going to pursue us all the days of our life. He's pursuing you. So stop running from him. Run towards him. And we get to live in the house of the Lord forever if you accept Jesus into your heart as your Lord and Savior. If you commit your life to him, that doesn't mean you're going to live a perfect life, but it means you're living a life submitted to him. When you fall on your face, you ask for forgiveness and fall back on Jesus. And we use this world as the Great Commission, to go and tell everybody about Jesus, everybody in your class, in your work, in your school, in your neighborhood, that they see Jesus through your actions and then through your words. And so I hope my story brings you hope. I hope my story brings you hope, to rely on Jesus and encourages you to fall back on who Jesus is. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for honestly making this such a sweet space for me to be able to share my stories, in the intense parts of my life, in the depths of my heart. I really am honored that I get to do this every week, and that I just have a platform that is safe, and y'all are so kind, and gracious and gentle to me. And so thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.